Welcome to our second segment on the mentorship aspect. So, we have initiated your relationship with your mentor. Does it mean that you're going to leave and hope that the relationship grows? For people that have been in actual relationships, if you ask out someone and then you ghost them or you disappear the following day, you're not going to have someone to hug the following day. And the same applies to relationships and mentorship. You need to nature and maintain those relationships. And it takes energy and time, and most importantly, commitment to be able to nurture and maintain some of these relationships with the goal of consistently growing together and getting the best outcomes for both the mentor and the mentee. So, TK, what are some of the things that you've done over the past couple of years to maintain or nurture your relationships?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? So me, I used the three tried and tested sort of like ideas,
They
or
have to be tried and tested.
yeah, they have to try
Yeah. Yeah.
it. So the first idea is continuous communication, right?
Mm,
So it's one thing to send that first message, but then you also have to that maintain that continuous communication, right? And the most important thing about continuous communication is being strategic about it, right? Because there is a constraint here,
mm,
right? There's a constraint of time, right? So you also have to understand, the time of your mentor, right?
mhm,
And make sure that you are strategic about it. So how can you be strategic, right? Just sending an email asking about calendar availability, time availability, those small things, yeah, because you're able to understand the heartbeat or the patterns of your mentor, right? And that also creates respect within, like, your mentor will be like, okay, he actually respects me and all. So I feel like that is the most important thing. Like, make sure that there's continuous communication, but do it strategically, because there is always this constraint, right?
mm,
So for me, I've always find scheduling ahead a very important skill, right?
mhm,
You know, we meet, for example, this is January, right?
mhm,
Then you guys like talk, like send an email, like how does your schedule look like for the rest of the
mhm,
month? Where can we talk? So that the person is able in time to create time for you, or like a schedule to talk about things, right? And this is very helpful in order to to keep nurturing that relationship, right?
mm,
And the second thing, which is what we also talked about, like the last episode when we talked about what is the importance of starting, and what is the importance of mentorship relationships, about understanding someone beyond the context, right?
mm,
For example, in my context, right, I met James as a professional contact, right? Someone
mhm,
who that want help professionally, right?
mhm,
But with time, sometimes the questions for professional questions can end.
mm,
You cannot continuously ask them, I read this article, how is my
mm,
case, and all.
mm,
They become so boring, become so routine, right? So I had to understand James beyond even the professional, right? His family, his values, the
mm.
VIP, the
Yeah.
VIP we talked
That
about, right?
what drives them?
Yeah, it's also important to understand, because
Mm,
you are building a lot. We are now moving from just that message to this sustainable nature relationship, right? So it is important to understand someone beyond the context of a relationship, right? So I had to understand my mentors personally, and I was also, like, for example, during Christmas, send some personal messages, Merry Christmas, greet your family, and all, right? So that creates sort of like a mentality that you do care, right? And then the third most, I think, to me, that's the most important point, right?
mm,
Don't be, don't go into a relationship for a benefit,
mm.
right? Don't expect a benefit, right? I've seen this
The
personally.
what can I get from this person
What did I get
mentality?
from this?
Yeah.
It's not about that expectation, right?
Mm,
Because if you think, like, for example, there's I have a lot of relationship with VCs this side, right? VCs are in a business of giving you money, investing, right? That's what they do on a daily basis, right?
That's their
So
business.
go ahead and say that my benefit, the only basis of this relationship is I want an investment or money, right? You're not gonna get much from it, right? Because there's this benefit that is linked in your mind that I must get this, right? For me, for example, if I'd gone to Jem saying that I want to work in McKinsey, it's either you give me an offer for this to work or nothing, right? Then those priorities, you have the wrong priorities, and that relationship will never last, right? Because your mind will be like saying, so may I please have a job? May I please have an interview, right? So try to go beyond the obvious, right? Go beyond understanding the person, right? Maybe if he's a VC, understand maybe, why he joined VC, why he joined VC, why not another else, those questions are sort of like accountable, because you keep them accountable, you keep them challenged, right? Which is very important in leadership, right? And they also learn from you, right? So I feel like understanding someone beyond the context is very important. I think those three have really worked. And I feel like Farai, with what I've said, right, I think you have someone we have a perfect example of a nature long-term relationship, right? So may you share like what you did in a practical manner to sustain the relationship.
I think it's also, I think just on the last point that you raised, it's, you talked about this idea of, you know, professional conversations become monotonous. Then
Yes.
it has to come to your VIPs, but you still can't initiate that VIP's conversation if you don't know yours, and if
Yes.
you're not able to, yeah. So I think that was a very, very, very brilliant conversation, to open up. I think definitely for another day. And these are the things that we talk to our mentors, our mentors and our mentees at the Bridge program about, which, because it's very, very important. I think for me, one of the relationships that I've built, and I look back and I've learned a lot from them over the past couple of years, is my relationship with Fred Swaneker. Soon after college, I started working as the deputy chief of staff to Fred Swaneker. This is an opportunity that not many people get straight out of
Yeah,
college.
that's true. Yeah.
And to me, what this meant was, I trust in your capabilities to deliver and to do work. So show me what you can do. But it wasn't an issue of, I went on LinkedIn, I contacted him, and all of a sudden I'm getting to work as deputy chief of staff. My first conversation with Fred Swaneker started in 2016 when we had a gala for Anzisha Fellows, and then he came out and was being chauffeur driven, on that day. So I accompanied him to the car, and I was like, sir, I just want to thank you for the conversation that we had. I had no idea who this man was, but I just connected with the things that he was doing. I'm like, oh my God, if this guy built ALA, these are the things that I'm also interested in.
Yes. Yes.
So I talked to him. I told him, look, this is where I'm coming from. This is what I've done. I'm looking for college. He's like, oh, apply to the African Leadership University in Mauritius. At that point in my life, I'd only heard about Mauritius on National Geographic. I was like, who goes to study on an island?
Yeah.
And he had come to present,
Right.
a
Yeah.
conversation about a presentation about Mauritius and ALU. So I had then applied to ALU, managed to get my admissions, and when I became a student, the first thing I did is emailed him, Mr. Swaneker, thank you so much for that particular day. You inspired me to apply to ALU. I'm enjoying my journey so far. Da, 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 da. Continued. He
Yeah.
responded.
Yeah.
That was in my first semester. And at the end of every semester, I just made it a personal, you know, priority to
Priority.
update him on what I've done that semester, what I was learning. And to him, I think that was also good because as an entrepreneur building a university, that feedback from someone
Yeah.
that's
So important.
experiencing was
Yeah.
also very valuable. So I would communicate and send all these things. If, I got an award, or like I used to do a lot of entrepreneurial competitions in Mauritius,
Yeah.
global entrepreneurship weekend. And so I would be like, oh, we've been featured in the newspaper. There's a newspaper. We've done this. And so sort of like giving updates. So he
Yeah.
was never out of touch with the things that I was doing. Right. Um, and again, when it came to Christmas and New Year, you want to give that update and be like, oh, happy New Year. You don't lose anything by saying that. But I'm not gonna be in Fred Swanika's email every weekend or every day. It's staggered, maybe 1 month ahead or 2 months ahead, and just continue doing the work that I was doing with the goal that, I'm learning from this person. And I think it was only later on what particular day, and this is something that he mentioned, we went to so we had a competition on campus
Yeah.
where we're building products for a pitch competition.
Yeah.
So we had built a raw solar container school
Yes.
project, which had won. And as part of that, Fred Swanika opened the doors to his house,
Yeah.
invited us for lunch
Yeah.
around Christmas time. So we went there. Uh, Before I went to his house, I was like, I think, you know, I've been following this guy's TED Talks and the things that he's doing. And then I bought him a book
Yes.
by Tim Ferriss called Tribe of Mentors. I was like, for someone that's an entrepreneur, he still requires mentorship, right?
Yeah.
Some way, somehow. I can't give him that, but I think books are important. So I went to his house. I gave him the book, left it at his door. He enjoyed reading it. He sent me a message. He's like, oh, enjoyed reading your book, really loved it. And that was all about it. That was like end of second year. I went through third year, fourth year. Even after that dinner, I sent a text and like, thank you so much for the wonderful food. I remember that day we ate prawn, and I love prawn.
Yes.
So I sent a message, left it, and as the more I did this, the more I went to Kenya and did internships there, the more I, did all these kind of things. I became sort of like a familiar part of the ALU community because I was engaged in things that I loved doing and I was interested in. And that thing of this is a guy who's trying to innovate education on the continent, and I'm also trying to do the same. The way those synergies of saying this is what I've learned and this is where we can connect. And I would literally take time to make a report, like a PDF report with like pictures and statistics and everything of what I've learned, what I've recovered, what I've been thinking, what ideas I think are gonna be changing the future. And I would send these to him and the rest of the stuff and be like, this is what I'm thinking about. To a point where just before I graduated, I was in the process of like thinking, okay, do I go back and start working on Shasha full time, or do I create more opportunities to learn? And Fred Swanika's chief of staff, a lady called Megan Cole, sent me a message like, "Oh, we're looking for deputy chief of staff." Blah blah blah. I just like skimmed through the email, but I was like, he can't be looking for me.
Yeah.
So 3 days later, they're like, hey, we are moving with candidates to the next level. Are you interested? I was like, oh my God, I thought you wanted me to help you look for someone else. They're like, no, 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 no. We're interested in you. And I signed up for that opportunity, had a trial run. After like 2 weeks, Fred then called me and he was like, congratulations, you've got the job. You're
Yeah.
starting now. That's even before I got my degree, right?
Yeah.
That's even before I got my degree. I was never asked like, what's your GPA? What's this? Is like,
Yeah.
I
Now.
know you work hard
Mm.
and I'm looking for someone that's going to work hard.
Yeah.
And I'm giving you this job based off of your character and your personality, not your grades. So I think that to me was a wow moment. So
Wow.
4th of January, literally flew from Mauritius to Nairobi and started working there until I then got to business school. And even the move to business school was me going to Fred and saying, look, I really appreciate how I've grown. It was like, I'm happy you're going to business school, you're going to grow. And this is what I think mentorship is all about. It's pulling one another and saying, I
Yeah.
want you to become the best version of yourself. So he wasn't like, oh my God, you're leaving. And he was like, I'm happy you're growing and I think for mentors, it gives a certain level of happiness when they get to see their mentees grow and acknowledge that, they learned something from them. That's how that relationship has grown. And even up to now, we still maintain that, conversation, but it took 4 years, right?
Yeah.
So you don't look at going into a mentorship relationship for the short run.
Yeah, I think that's a powerful story. And you've shared with me that story at a more personal level. And I was like, wow, this is just inspirational. And one point you talked about is that you got a job before you even grade, right?
Mm,
And I think this is a very important point because in this world, we are more about people are numbers rather than personalities, right?
mm,
And now people are sort of like, I have to go do the grades. I have to make sure I get 4.0 GPA.
mm,
And you don't go out there, to interact with people, to network with people, right? And sort of like, I think we all go back to that VIP's framework, right? That is
mm,
not about the numbers, right?
mm,
It's about the intrinsic value in values, in
mm,
interest, in personalities, in strengths, right? Rather than just a mere number or a mere GPA or a mere resume, right?
mm.
So I think that's a very important point. And thank you so much for sharing your story. This was a great conversation. Next episode, we're going to talk about the last thing on this mentorship module, which is communication, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
communication in the
Thank you.
context of relationship, and I mean it's very interesting because as I look back at all my jobs and internships that I have done, most of them have come through being connected by a mentor,
Yeah.
and you don't even have to do a rigorous application when people trust in your character. That's why I think character education is very important, even in how we teach at the Shasha Bridge program.
Yeah. It's like you've applied, but in real time through your character, through your personality, through your values,
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah. And it's
yeah.
something that you're always building on and
Yeah.
growing. So yeah, thanks a lot for that conversation. Really loved hearing the points that you're giving about how to sustain and maintain a relationship.
Yeah. Thank you. See you.
Thank you.